I want to talk now about osteoporosis risk. So here you see a normal bone matrix, and there you see a bone with osteoporosis. So the white is the bone, and the reddish is basically empty space. So osteoporosis, the bone gets holes in it. The bone is a miraculous crystalline structure. It is so strong and truly phenomenally strong for the weight. Bones tend to be very, very light. That's why birds can fly, right? Their bones are so light. But we don't want the bones to get too light and too thin, because then they break easily. This is a compression fracture. So you can get many different types of fractures, but in this one, the bone has become so weak that this middle vertebrae has actually crunched down on itself. It'd be like if you took an empty Coca-Cola can and pressed it into itself, and it would compress. And then you get this type of compression fracture. Unfortunately, we get this aging and loss of spinal integrity. And so if you have this posture when you're 55, you better start doing some work. I'm talking to myself here, so that you don't end up with this at 65, that head forward, looking down, barely able to stand up. And this is from the spine losing integrity. And then a lot of patients end up with this, a brace, because their spine actually won't hold them up anymore. And really, it's all about quality of life. I'll ask people, or I'll say to people, you could live to 100, and they go, oh my God, no, I don't want to live to 100. And I say, well, what if you could be healthy and happy and live to 100? Oh yeah, that'd be fine. So again, it's all about quality of life. So as we're looking at things like hormone replacement, well, you have a little bit higher risk, and then you're comparing that to your quality of life. So Western diagnostics, the most common is called a DEXA scan. Okay, it's an X-ray scan that's looking at your bones, taking a comparison, or actually taking an X-ray, and then a tech will look at it and come up with what's called a DEXA score. And you have T scores and Z scores. And it's important to have someone read those that isn't going to try to scare the crap out of you. It's to have someone read it that really understands it, but can go into the reality of it with you. For example, if you're a slender, athletic woman, and you've been that way your whole life, and you come back with a low T score, which is comparing you to a young woman, well, we really don't know if your bones are really thin. We just don't, if they're really damaged, we just know that you have thin bones. Well, maybe you've had those your whole life. Maybe they're actually quite strong, but because you're slender and your bone structure is small, it looks like you're osteoporotic, because this is not a perfect test. And so make sure that you talk to someone that can kind of walk you through this so that you don't jump off the bridge. And by the way, there are many, many ways to reverse osteoporosis. Now, don't tell your doctor I said that, because they just don't believe that. But one of my favorite people, it's a young woman who's now 97, who was one of my son's best friend. My son's 20. But when my wife was in school, they would hang out together. He would go to her house, and they would make up games together. And she was a foodie, so they'd go out to eat. But I met her because she came to my clinic, and she showed me her DEXA score. And she said, what should I do? So I kind of went through some things, and she looked at me, and she literally shook her finger in my face. And she said, young man, I don't think you understand. I want to get rid of this condition. I want to be have great bones and not be considered to have osteoporosis. And I said, wow, okay. And I pulled out everything for her. Bone broth. She started doing bone broth daily that she made herself. We gave her calcium, we gave her vitamin D, gave her vitamin K. I had her start doing Tai Chi and yoga, because Tai Chi and yoga are each the best exercise for certain parts of the body. Tai Chi is overwhelmingly the best for the hips. Qigong, anything where you're carrying the weight in the hips and thighs is great for hip mass in the hip bones. But it doesn't do anything for the spine because you're always holding the spine erect. So for that, yoga tends to be much better. But yoga is only good for the wrists if you're doing a lot of, postures where you're supporting yourself by your hands and your wrists. But the combination is great. So she did all of it. Still in her 90s, she's doing Tai Chi all the time. She does yoga. She changed her diet, added all the supplements, did the bone broth. And what she did was great. She would make the bone broth and then put it in ice cube trays. And she would use the ice cubes like bouillon, right? Pull a couple out a day, put them in warm water, and have her bone broth and her collagen. 2 years later, she went back to the same doctor. He looked at her DEXA score and said, "Oh, this has got to be a mistake. I need you to go back and get checked again." She did, came back, same result, no longer had osteoporosis. Now, this is a woman who at that time was in her 60s, and she completely reversed it. And she did not do estrogen. If she'd done estrogen, she might have even got better results with the bone, but she didn't want to do that, which was great. So if any doctor or anybody else tells you that your osteoporosis is not reversible unless you do drugs, forget it. There's only one drug that actually reverses osteoporosis. All of the others, which are 95% at least of the prescriptions, do nothing to actually prevent osteoporosis. They hide osteoporosis, okay? But naturally, there's a ton of stuff that you can do.